is he going to pay the price for showing his actions in Coronation Street tonight? First at 7:30, then we're back for more at 8:30. Right now, though.
Hi, Pete.
Hello, Anne. Hello.
Are you all right?
Well, I'm out of breath, but still, apart from that.
So, did you, was it your own health that you had, you had bad news the other day? Or was it your
Oh, no.
There was someone in the family, was there?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, you're keeping all right yourself?
Yeah, except for being short of breath.
Oh, is that recently or
Well,
more?
been for quite a while.
Oh, right.
It's been getting worse. I got a doctor's appointment on Friday.
Right.
Hope they can sort it out.
Yeah, perhaps they could give you some oxygen or something. I don't know.
Something maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Well, anything that can help you feel better, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
You know.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of it about at the moment, I'm afraid.
Yes. It seems so, yeah.
Yeah, with these vaccines and that, it affects people in different ways. But anyway, good job you're going to see the doctor anyway.
Yes.
So,
yep.
Yeah. Oh, I'm there all the time and all.
Well, there we are.
I'm just the start. I'm the start of it, although I don't know. Every time you have a test, they send the result to your doctor and then they want to see you. And
yeah.
I had a hearing test the other day and he wants to see me now, the doctor.
All right.
I might have to go for maybe I have to go for another scan or something.
All right. Yeah.
You know, they usually check your head or your ear, wherever it is. But, and then I get him the eye injections.
Oh,
I went to the doctor the other day. I said, "Oh, doctor," I said, "when's it going to end?" I said, "When's it going to end?" And he starts laughing because you know what the answer is.
Yeah.
Oh dear. So you going to you won't know about Chester now. He might not be.
No, I don't know yet. I've told Carl I'd wait until after I've seen the doctor. If they've got something to do and they can help me, then I may well go. But other than that, I don't know.
You might be might be trying something out by know.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh well, you've been very faithful. You've gone to quite a few of those trips.
Oh yeah. You
know,
I've always enjoyed Carl's trips.
Yeah. Well, I just stopped going because I don't know, can't remember now. I've been to York. I didn't want to go again, and I didn't fancy Anglesey. Did we go to Anglesey?
No,
we didn't go to that.
Yes, I did. I think yes, I did.
Yeah, but Fishbourne he's talking about now for next year.
Yeah, so I see. Yeah.
Well, he keeps saying about Fishbourne. Well, it would be nice to go there eventually.
Well, what's there? I'm not sure what's there, but still.
It's like it's a Roman temple, I think, or Roman.
Oh, right.
Not temple, a Roman villa, and it was quite a centre, I think.
Oh, right.
For Romans. Although I'm not really into the Romans, but I'm probably more into them now. You know, because they seem to have a better reputation after listening to Carl's sort of stories, you know. The idea that they sort of just filtered in, really. They didn't try and dominate us, did they? Well, they tried, I suppose.
They tried, yes. But they knew where their bread was buttered and where they got the most from. That's where they went.
Yeah.
They only came if they could get something.
Yeah, of course.
Mm.
Yeah. Funny old world. Well, I don't think I'll be going anywhere else apart from Chester.
Well, until I get rid of this, I don't know where I'll be going.
No. You see, you do see people with, oxygen and things quite often.
Well, the problem is I've got no chest pains.
No.
I'm not asthmatic.
No.
My blood pressure is fine. I've got a machine. I test my own blood pressure.
Yeah.
That's good. I've got a thing to check my temperature. My temperature is good. So who knows?
It's a mystery.
It is.
It's a mystery.
It certainly is. Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, I suppose they'll do some tests, and
sure they will. Yeah.
But it is difficult, when you're on, you're all right really, apart from maybe they'll check your lung capacity and that sort of thing.
Well, it may well do, yeah.
Maybe they're just underused, because you're not getting as much exercise as you get older.
That's one of the problems. That's right.
Yeah, you just don't get that, circulation, but I'm sure they can sort it out for you.
Well, the blood pressure says I got a heart pulse rate of 98.
Oh, right. Yeah. Because, mine's not far off that. She's about 87 or something like that,
The blood pressure machine counts your pulse as well.
Yeah. My blood pressure's always been good. But my brothers, both of them, are got bad hearts and blood pressure and, all that stuff.
Yeah, I got no chest pain or anything like that.
No.
It points to a heart problem, but there we are. We don't know.
I think it sounds more like circulation, really, doesn't it? Not getting that sort of pumping, like water, fluid in your body, so that's what that can make you breathless, can't it?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
So they'll sort out something.
Yes, I hope so.
Yeah. But are you managing to do your shopping and that, or
yeah?
Or you are just hard.
I'm wearing the mask is a problem because that.
Oh yeah, you should really be excused from that.
I should think so. Yeah.
No. Yeah. Hello, Richard.
Hi, Richard.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Richard Enos.
Pardon?
Richard Enos. Have you got anyone in Bridgend? A family in Bridgend? There is an Enos, I think.
Yeah, there are a few there. I don't know any of them.
No.
I know there are some there.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing the name. Something to do with the church. some church.
Yeah, there were some of them, I think.
Yeah. Chapel, I would say, more than church.
Yeah, I think there were some. A load were in the Salvation Army.
Pardon?
A lot of them were in the Salvation Army as well.
Oh, right, yeah, something like that, yeah. Because I remember being a Catholic, I had to join in with all the different congregations, and I had a good time, really, going around all the different churches, finding out, getting saved here, there, and everywhere. That's what they were trying to do, save me. Yeah. So I have been saved. So there you are. I've got a double whammy. Oh, I'm sorry. I mustn't scoff. At the time, I thought it was great. And Hope Baptist Chapel, I remember going to see Billy Graham there. You know, he was not the real Billy Graham, a film about Billy Graham when he came to the UK and you know, was talking, proselytizing, you know, and it was good. It's different. Pat, come on. Well, all we've had is rows on Archaeology Cymru, innit?
Oh,
That's all we've had is rows. People.
What are the rows? What rows are you talking about?
Well, it's Carl's fault. He comes on trying to be a bit of a dictator, you know.
Oh.
His usual, you know, when I say this, you do it. You can't do that to adults. I was taught petals. I was taught how to teach adults. You're not supposed to dictate to them like that, you know. Oh, Pat!
I'm here.
Oh, he was just going on about, we're going to have to cut down on trips and things, and because of the, you know, the global warming.
Oh, right.
And we're going to have to start having, you know, bringing our own containers with our drinks in. And I thought, oh, well, I had a glass of wine last time. How are you not having that? I have to bring my own glass.
Hi, Jess.
Hello, Jess.
Yeah.
How is everyone this week?
Okay, thank you.
I apologise if you hear some sort of music. I've closed all the windows, etc., but I've got neighbours across the road that are absolutely selfish, and I'm close to strangling them. But I've done the best that I could, and I'll talk over it anyway, so that's fine. It's probably because I can hear it. Has anyone got any news this weekend?
No, I was having a look, but I couldn't really see anything except that they're starting to encourage. Oh, they're starting to encourage pilgrimages in Devon because there's lots of medieval churches and ways, you know, byways to various places, and it's becoming popular, I suppose, with these pilgrimages on TV, you know.
Yeah,
It'll mean that people will keep an interest in medieval, you know, history and that.
Yeah.
And folk tales.
I know that started to take off really with people's interest, just in the media and just in popular culture. But yeah,
it's all right.
It's nice to see people's interest. I think there is a few groups that I'm part of where people are really trying to get involved and even try and learn new skills. So it's nice to see that. But at the same time, when you're looking at it from your own experience, it can be a little bit iffy because you're only surrounded around people that you know like the same stuff as you. So you're not really sure whether you're seeing the bigger picture, really. So I hope there is getting off. I know a lot of people have started looking into getting into history courses, and I know quite a few people have been looking into the archaeological courses in Cardiff, etc. So you do see people having an interest, and it's nice to see, but it's just a shame that so much of it is gone already.
Yeah. And you know, the funding as well for archaeology. Although Cardiff has always had archaeology.
It's probably because it's a Russell group. They tend to do better with the funding. And
right. Yeah.
So that I think it's frustrating because I understand why, but I think there should be more funding in general to allow everyone from all walks of life to get involved, because that's what's important to history, is the perspective, and someone from an upper class can have a different experience to someone in a lower class.
Yeah, I agree. It's it wasn't until I went, not I, but Carl went to university because he taught us about archaeology, and he was a graduate, and that was one of the reasons why I was happy to go to his classes, and we have learned a lot, but I think you're right, it's not enough being taught at a lower level, at a sort of college level or even school. Anyway, I better go now.
It's all right, Anne. Thank you. Peter, any news this week?
No news from me. No.
Okay, that's fine. Richard?
No, nothing.
No, that's fine. And Pat?
No news.
No, that's fine. I know in Turkey they believe they found the remains of the Trojan horse.
I saw that.
Which it's very interesting, especially the way, I think I like the fact that people are having these quirky takes on archaeology, because it makes it more niche in my eyes, and you start to find out the little things that probably bug you. But they found that within the city walls. And they think that maybe this could be evidence of what once was the horse. And it's
how big was it?
Not much. It was just bits of wood that they found in the ground.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to.
They put a big
army, wasn't it?
A model. Yeah, it must have been an artist's impression. It was huge horse.
It would be amazing just to find that the way it was, though. But I think that's a little bit ambitious.
Yeah.
Today I've decided to look at Vikings, but in North America, and just only because I've seen quite a few articles coming out this week in terms of DNA analysis, and even an argument that not only did the Vikings have an influence in North America, but North America had an influence on the Vikings. And this DNA analysis that they've had is shown that they might have brought an individual over to Europe way before when we think that people from Europe brought Native Americans over. So I want to look at the excavations that they've had, have a look at that discussion. And there's a lot of conflicting evidence, and I think the reason why the archaeology of Vikings in North America is so iffy is because nothing's been conclusive yet. And with me, that really annoys me, because then I end up sitting on the fence, and I kind of want to wait until there's more information before making a definite opinion on it. So we'll have a look at the discussions, have a look at some of the findings, and really try and get to grips with why this is so important. And do we think there was evidence of Vikings in North America? So I'll share screen now.
A lot of time in Greenland, which is just across the water, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's part of one of the key reasons why people seem to think that there is possible evidence of Vikings. And there's a lot of manuscripts being made at the time that hint towards North America being a place where Vikings actually had visited and left a mark there as well. So I think Greenland has got a big part to play in this, and that's something that we'll get into. So I've given a little introduction of what I want to look at today, and we'll get into it if my laptop wants to work. So they were global pioneers. I think with the Vikings, they visited quite a lot of places and left a big mark on them. Whether you see that with Wales in terms of that was something that I also wanted to note as well, is in Wales, the relationship of the Vikings in Wales, it was more of a trading area, and the Vikings saw Wales as an important place to keep on their side and trade with them. And I think that's something that we need to get to grips with Vikings, is that they didn't necessarily go to a place to bring destruction along with them. I think they liked experiencing other cultures, liked exploring. I think they were just very curious people. And I'm not saying they're completely innocent, because I know there's evidence to suggest that they had a bad streak to themselves. But I think you get that with lots of individuals and groups in history. And one thing that I have found through researching lately is that Wales is an important place as well. Just going off on a little tangent, but Wales is important for a lot of groups, because you can use Wales as a way of gaining power over the rest of Britain. But we'll get into that into another discussion. But the Vikings, to me, have left a mark in Wales, Scotland, England, all the places all around in Europe, going all the way over to the eastern part of the world. And there's now evidence coming out that they visited North America. And I think this is a very exciting one, because it rewrites what we know about Vikings and America at the time. And I think discovering Viking archaeology in this area is exciting. It's a new thing in history and archaeology that has got people interested again, and I think it's got people really wanting to have a look, because it's so unique and different. I know quite a few people who have a strong interest in Vikings, know about some of these sites and what's going on there. And I think the one thing that I find frustrating is when you look at it online is how sometimes they don't tell you things straight away. You've got to do a lot of digging. And I think that's just the one thing that really makes people iffy, because the discussions are so lengthy and flowery in language that it puts them off. And it would put me off, especially if I was just someone who was having a little look in the evening doing nothing. Because sometimes my brain does not like to work past 10 p.m. But I think one thing I want to look at is how the Vikings were able to influence the Native Americans, and how the Native Americans were able to influence the Vikings. And I don't think it was such a big influence like we see in Britain, but I think there's a little bit of an influence. And throughout North America, there's two places in North America, and a lot throughout documentary sources that have given us little scattered pieces that we need to put together, which is very complex to do, because when you look into things like this, it's almost, you feel like you're on a detective program, or maybe on Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code, where you're piecing together all these little facts and you get the bigger picture, and it's absolutely marvelous to look at. And I think this is what I felt like with looking at the Vikings in North America. And the attention of experts getting involved in this have seen a huge flip in what we know with the Vikings and America. And I think it really shows us how, for me, if I was to talk about Vikings, I know a lot of people see them as war hungry. They like blood. They like destruction around them. Whereas if I looked at them, I would see them as a group of people that got along with marginal lands in Britain, brought a lot of influence through their stories to Britain, to which you see things like Sutton Hoo, which I think personally is a Briton who has been buried with lots of Anglo-Saxon and Viking influence, because it's something that they held close. And I think Vikings left a mark through lots of ways and touched many people. And I think I see them as a group of people who are very curious, and that's what I see them. It's completely different to what people might initially think. And one of the first things that started it off for me was York, how domesticated they were, and how trade was an important part of their culture, and how they were able to really make a mark and settle somewhere strongly if they put their mind to it. So that's what we're going to look at today. So on this map here, in the top right hand corner, you just see the enlarged area, but we get a bit closer here. And you see the two sites. If I can get a little pen out to show you. Happy days is working. So you've got this site here. land, say Axe Meadows National Historic Site, which was the first site to actually focus on. And then we have the Point Roos excavation site as well, which is on the opposite side. And the archaeology in this is not very strong. The only reason why I say that is that we don't see structures or pottery or vast amount of stuff, but the stuff that we're finding is screaming at us that we need to look further, and that the Vikings in their manuscripts were telling us something about America. And I think Vikings just went over there with the curiosity. I don't think they stayed there for long. I think they were just having a little bit of a curious moment, went on an adventure like they do, and it's almost like they like experiencing different places and finding new places and seeing if that works for them and if it's plausible to actually settle there, and maybe see if it benefited them. And I think that's the one thing that you see with Vikings, is that they look for places that benefit them, and Wales benefited them highly with a lot of trade, just like Wales has benefited many other groups of people in history through trade as well, especially the Normans. But this is what the Vikings' aims were. They were, I think the reason why they were a threat to the Anglo-Saxons is because they're able to be very curious, and they're very calculated in the way that they can go to places and settle. But I think this is maybe an attempt to settle, and they decided that it wasn't for them and they left. Not many people talk about what had happened, because we don't actually know 110% what has gone on there. And I think with me, what's frustrating is that we have no evidence from these sites that suggest social aspects of the archaeology, and they don't tell us much about their religion or anything about ships. So it is a very complex one, but it is telling us that something's there. And I think this is something that's in the early stages, and we'll definitely see more coming out as we read about it. Like I said, for this last article that we'll look at about, it was basically a child where a Viking and a Native American is said to intermarry and was brought over to Europe, and they've found traces of that throughout the DNA. So that one was something that we'll talk about, and we'll see whether we feel on the fence of that one as well, because you read all this stuff and the headlines are really extravagant, in your face, really get you excited, and then you read into it and it's long-winded, and you're left leaving not sure what's going on. So this is what I feel like, but I do have a bit of an opinion towards the end. This is the first site that we have, and it's truly an amazing site. This was the first site that they had found in the 1960s, and this was done through a lot of research and logical thinking, and I think it puts it up there as one of those sites. And it's only now, I think, it's starting to gain traction as well through a lot of scholars and people through the media. So much so that it's actually made itself into this book that I have. It's called Archaeology, the Whole Story, and they've put a lot of sites in here, but it's only sites that have been seen as very significant. So Vikings in North America was one of the ones that they decided to put in here. And you see lots of different recreations by people on how it would look like, and this was based on evidence found in Iceland. And I think it ranks Vikings as one of the greatest voyages of all time, and I think it's showing us that they had complex skills in terms of ensuring their boats were able to go over there, ensuring that they're able to create a small settlement, and it seemed that they knew what they were doing. I think that's what makes it important to go in these books, is because you realise that this is bringing the attention to a lot of people, and it is something that is rewriting history. So in this site, there was no standing structures that had been found. There was longhouses that had been reduced to their sod foundations found here, and they were appearing as bumps and lumps in the landscape. But after the excavation, the site was reburied and the remains of the buildings have been protected by an inert material and sodded over. So this model at the museum shows that the Norse camp what it would have looked like. And it was a small community that was built a short distance inland on a narrow gravel terrace by waterlogged peat bog close to the stream. And it's important because here we're seeing them having respect for the archaeology and wanting to protect it. So they reburied it over and left it where it was. But they've created a reconstruction to allow people to experience all of this and get involved. And I like that type of history. I've always liked places like St. Fagans, for example, to actually go somewhere and learn about what they're doing it, which I think is so much better and something that we need to learn from. And this is on the UNESCO World Heritage Site, so it is extremely significant, not just to America, but globally. And like I said, it just makes you really question what's going on here, because it was put in UNESCO's, so the excavation finished in 1968. And in 1978, that was when it was put on the UNESCO list. So they really saw the importance quite quickly, I felt like. And is notable because this is evidence of Norse colonization of North America. And is giving us a possible connection with Leif Erikson as well. And so people really, really wanted to jump on this and try and see if they could find more evidence. But they started off with looking at a map from 1590. And this map was significant because it shows Latinized Norse names in North America being used, which to people suggested that this is something that has been held, just like Britain. The Norse way of naming places is stuck with America in this area. And this is about an area that has been radiocarbon dated to about 1,000 years ago, between 990 to 1050 AD. And this is just based on dating the structures that have been there. So this area was open and grassy, and there would have been forests nearby at the time for boat building and house building and even iron extraction. And the iron extraction is an important part as well. And there was 8 buildings they found altogether, which they labelled them A to J. And they've been constructed of sod placed over a wooden frame, and based on associated artefacts, buildings were identified as dwellings and some of them workshops. And I think, to be honest, when you think of York and the little workshops that they had going on there and people living together, you can see how this would have worked. And this reconstruction here, I think, perfectly shows how it would have looked like. And they did go to Iceland to find other buildings to connect that with. They're not sure how many people would have lived there. There's been no burials that are found. Archaeological evidence are saying that it could have supported about 30 to 160 people at the time. And when they were looking at Greenland, because they were thinking Greenland was that area where Vikings had gone to, and it was a place to just go from there to America. And the population of Greenland at the time was about 2,500, meaning that this was 10% of the Norse settlement on Greenland. And you have historians like Julian Richards, for example, noting that it was highly unlikely the Norse had sufficient resources to construct a string of such settlements. And what they're saying here is that a lot of people disagree with this being a settlement because they didn't have the equipment needed. But I think they tried, and that was the reason why it was abandoned, because it just didn't take off. And I know Vikings tend to not put themselves in a situation where they might find it too much to handle or a bad idea, so they just left. And I think that was just the wise thing to do. But they were able to get their curiosity out of the way. I think one thing that people need to understand about the medieval period, it doesn't matter whether you were Viking or not, there was always curiosity with the world around you, and you see that with a lot of sites. Especially the one thing that I like, there's manuscripts in medieval Britain where people from other worlds painted blue, and that was a very expensive colour at the time. So it showed that they had this admiration and almost a curiosity that they really respected about these people. And I think the Vikings were the ones that just took it further to try and find out more about the world around them. And there is food remains in this site that they had found, which are butternuts, which are significant because they didn't grow naturally in this area, which the presence of these nuts probably indicates that Norse inhabitants travelled further south to obtain them and bring them back up north. So there is even evidence argued to suggest that there was even hunting with an array of animals that lived in the area. So you have wolf, fox, bear, lynx, all types of birds, fish, seals, whales and walruses. There is no longer rich in game here due to harsh winters as well. And I think the harsh winters caused a lot of losses for the Vikings, and I think they just really saw this as a difficult place to settle. And the lack of game they found supports archaeologists' beliefs that the site was inhabited by the Norse for a relatively short time. But again, this is something that they constantly discuss and argue over. And they think that the inhabitants abandoned the site in an orderly fashion. In 2019, there was a study. They found that the Norse activity in this area wasn't as long as a century, and so it was very short, and they decided to leave. And there was an individual called Adam of Bremen, who was a German cleric, who was the first European to mention Vinland in the text that he composed in 1073. And he wrote, he, the Danish king, told me of another island discovered by many in that ocean. It's called Vinland because vines grow there on their own accord, producing most excellent wine. Moreover, that and sown crops around there, we have asserted not from fabulous conjecture, but from the reliable reports of the Danes. And a lot of people talk about this as maybe the reason why it was called Vinland was because this is an area that would have had a lot of vines growing. But as we see with this area, there's a significant finding with this. And I think one thing that annoys me when I read about this site is the archaeologist involved. Her name is Anne Ingstad. She was the archaeologist, and it was her husband who was an explorer, Helge Ingstad, and they were both Norwegian. And every the book, the reports online, when they talk about her, even though she's the archaeologist, she comes second to her husband, and she's not seen as that significant. And in fact, it's almost a sense that she should thank him for all of this. So I disagree, but they went to set off to find Vinland after hearing about this. And they even found Vinland in the Icelandic sagas. And it meant Wineland. Well, that's what historians speculated for a long time. And this common hypothesis, these two individuals had theories that they would have experienced a place somewhere more south than where they were thinking of excavating. And they felt like this was a false assumption. So they said that grapes would have still grown along this area back in the Viking period, but we no longer see this. We can't take our landscape that we know it is today as a piece of evidence, we need to think about what it would have been like back then. And when they had an excavation from 1960 to 1968, there was an international team that led this, and it was down to an individual that lived locally to the site. He pointed to these individuals here, well, Anne and her husband, he pointed to them and said, these are mounds over here. We're not really sure where they are. Go to town on it. And they did. That was when they found 7 Norse buildings at the site. And she said that the Vinlands was, it does relate to grapes, but this was because there would have been grapes in this area, something that the Vikings would have appreciated at the time. And they even found, like I said, the butternuts in the bog on the site. And like I said, they believe that they ventured more southwards. And I think that makes sense with the next site that we'll look at as well. But this was thought to be an old Indian camp at the time. This is what they called it. And then they realised it was houses from the Viking period. And I think it's really interesting because it's only in these small areas. It doesn't seem to be the two cultures of Vikings and the Native Americans. They didn't seem to have evidence of clashing, but they didn't seem to have evidence where they took anything on from both their cultures as well. So it seemed like they were just happy to leave themselves to it. And it was, like I said, there was a lot of similarities in the characteristics, the structures and the artifacts found on the site compared to Greenland and Iceland. From around the time. There's even evidence in terms of Eric the Red having some sort of discussion about this site, but something that again is heavily debated, and a lot of people are left scratching their heads with it, which I don't blame them. I think it is frustrating when you're trying to piece things together and people aren't giving you the correct information. But they even found something even more interesting here as well, which was a ridged pin of bronze. And like I said, there wasn't many artifacts that was found in this site, which is disappointing because you just want to learn more about them and what life was like. But I think the fact that we're finding the butternuts and finding little pins like this, it's showing us that there's people here. And even though it's a small quantity, I think it speaks a lot of volumes to a lot of scholars, because this is something that is screaming at them in the face to even look further, and something that I agree is probably the best way to go about it. Just go into this image as well here. If I get the pen out, this was the excavation site. So these little blocks here is where they excavated. There's a lot of excavation going on here in this site. That I think they've done a very extensive excavation, and it's fantastic. I think this is the benefit of having such a big team that they did to find all this. But it was these areas here. So if I get rid of all these red dots, these areas here in the excavation site were the evidence of the houses that they were finding, which they found quite a few dwellings or even workshops, and you can see it's hugging close to the coast here, and the river. That's something that we do find. But I do think it's amazing how we're able to see this in a bigger scale and see how they really tried to piece this together and try and find even more evidence. But it seems that the evidence that they were finding, that's all that they could do for now. They did find changes in the soil quite recently. That was something that was seen as an anomaly, something that people have called to ask for more investigation. I'm not sure whether that's something that they've taken up on. And like I said, they found lots of ridges and walls like that had come forward, showing that there was even a long, narrow fireplace in one of these buildings in the middle of the floor for heating, lighting, cooking. So you could even go further with that with social, and just show that they were very communal. They lived together, they cooked together, and they're very, I think I would say, a very close society to actually want to do things together, because this was only seen to be found in one of the bigger buildings. And they even looked at quite a few things, such as, like I said, the headed pin. If we go back to that, if it wants to let me know, wrong one here. So this was something that they had seen in Greenland and Ireland. This was just used to fasten their cloaks. And they even found in one of the other buildings a stone oil lamp and a small spindle wheel, which was used as a flywheel of a held hand spindle. And in the fire pit on the third dwelling, so it was a very small one, there was bone needle, which was used as a form of knitting there. So like I said, there wasn't much evidence, but the evidence here is telling us something to be they're very domesticated. So you've got one of them here that would have worn cloaks, so that would have been added to their identity. You had someone that was knitting in one of their homes using bone from an animal. I think it does show that they are using all the animals that they do have around them. They're making use of everything, and I think that just shows how they were able to settle in for as long. I wouldn't have said a long time, but the evidence is showing that we are seeing them there for a good few years. And there is even evidence of a lot of the evidence is pointing towards women being on this site, like I said, with the knitting and the spindle wheel. This is something that they found along with scissors as well, small scissors, and is thought to be part of a woman's knit, something that would have shown that there wasn't just men that was coming to this site. They even found a large number of iron boat nails or rivets found in the area, so they were able to identify the area as Norse based on all of this evidence. But unfortunately, I could only find a picture of one of them, and this was it. But I think it's fantastic to think of, because you get into grips with it and realise that the Vikings actually did have a close relation with North America and really tried to settle there as well. But we get to 2015, so a very long while after the 1960s. And if I go back to the image here, so we've gone from here now all the way 300 miles to this site here. And I think it fits in with our theory that they were moving down further south in terms of getting butternuts, or even if they had trade with the Native Americans there, because like I said, there seemed to be no evidence of conflict, and I think that's important to understanding how they treated people from other areas as well, because I don't think from the evidence we're getting much evidence of them wanting to conquer and oppress and force themselves into this area. It seemed that they tried, it didn't work, and they just left, and that is that. But they were the ones that were there first, really, when you think of Columbus. Anyway, so when they got to this site in 2015, it was satellite imagery that revealed this possible existence of another Viking site, and you can imagine all the scholars getting excited, really wanting to go a little bit more southern down to this Newfoundland and get to grips to see if they can find more evidence. Or I think with every excavation that you have, it's almost like you're trying to do better than the last excavation. You want to find out more things. You want to understand the people more. And I think this shows that we were seeing Norse traders and Norse individuals, travellers, whatever you wanted to call them. They were likely candidates for leaving behind traces of technology that they used. And this was the second finding to be recorded. And I think this was a little bit more definitive, I think, when they pieced this together. Like I said, there was workshops in the last site, and we didn't see anything in terms of dwelling, in terms of anything like that. They just found technology, and the technology was important because I think it told us how they were able to have a lot of skills with them and adapt it to this new area, such as iron working as well. So this is at Point Roos, and this is something that is a stormy point of the area. And I think, again, this just adds to the reason why people think this is so fantastic, because they must have really strong skills in knowing how to ensure that they have a strong ship to sail through these stormy areas and make it out alive. So this was excavated in 2015 to 2016, and a team of researchers had got involved here and really tried to get involved. And it was in 2017 when the report was submitted, and they wrote that they found no evidence whatsoever of Norse presence or human activity prior to the historic period. So none of the team, including some Norse specialists, deemed this area as having any traces of human activity. And I disagree with that, because I think some of the evidence here is telling us that maybe there is Norse activity, but it was very little, because it was something that they possibly ventured to at first and didn't really see it as a great place to settle. So when they were looking at these satellite images, they decided to have a excavation further. And this was seen to really rewrite the history of the Vikings in North America and their influence. Now, it's really iffy because the Vikings didn't really have a strong influence. I think the first site that we see is something that allows us to have more of an interest, more understanding. But this one is very iffy, and I think is something that's debated heavily at the moment. I know this is in the National Geographic when I was researching it, and it was something that they've done a very good coverage of this as well. But they were looking at the sagas, like I said. One of them was the Icelandic sagas, and this talks about Vinland and how the Vikings were able to have an influence, a connection with this area. But after looking at the first site, they thought they'd find more evidence, and they couldn't really. It was something that they found very difficult to do. And so as they went further and they started excavating, they started to see that they can not only spy out artifacts in a very barren landscape, but it was also in regions covered by tall grass and other plant life. So this was very hard to excavate. So they've done a test excavation to see if there was any initial evidence for the merits to further this study. So this is almost like preliminary research, just testing it out. And they did find remains of what appeared to be a turf wall, but they didn't feel like this was enough concrete evidence to tell them whether there was more evidence of activity here. But the Vikings even built a hearth here, so where people were burning things and creating things. And this was something that thought, this is iffy because there's other people living in this area that could have created this. Why did it always have to be the Vikings? Could the people themselves not catch on to this idea? So they do feel like that there is activity here, but they're not sure of the people that have been found. And they found here, so on the left is this fire-scorched face of a boulder, which is a probable iron ore roasting site. And on the right is larger lumps of a roasted bog iron ore as well. And these are the two pieces of evidence that they felt like told us more about the Vikings and how they were able to leave their mark on North America. But some experts are discussing how this is showing their ironworking skills and how they were able to settle and trade in this area and how they were benefiting from it. But it really confused people because even though they think they found evidence of a turf wall, it doesn't seem to be a full structure that they had found, not like the one from the last site. And I think the reason why people are being strict on this archaeology is because they really want to ensure that they've got the right idea. And when they were looking at this site, they were trying to gather as much as they can. So they were looking at the landscape, they were looking at how this probably would have looked, they've looked at sources, and they even looked at that old 1590 map and showed that there was a Viking Norse name for this area in Latin all that time ago, but it was something that they weren't sure of at first. So, like I said, this is something they're just trying to ensure that they've got all the grounds covered, and I can't fault them for that. They have found evidence of what could have been a campfire, but they're not sure. Again, this was possibly the indigenous people before the Norse had arrived, but they haven't actually dated this. And I think that's the problem, is that they haven't been able to date a lot of things. But this boulder is cracked because it was cracked by fire, and that's definite. This is what they found in the report. But it seems to be rather natural features of the area rather than it being something that was really significant in terms of Norse involvement. But they found ash surrounding the boulder, and they found in the ash that there was evidence of roasting, which is even glass-like waste byproduct, which is known as a slag as well. They found evidence here, which is proof of iron ore smelting, which is this has been pointed towards as being evidence of this being a Norse site. So it's quite interesting how they're able to see that there's smelting going on here, but why so far away from that settlement? And it's led some archaeologists for a call for a bigger excavation on here and trying to see if we can find more evidence. But there has been a 2016 documentary, which is helpful. It's called Vikings Unearthed, and it just talks about this excavation and how the radiocarbon dating of 2 berries that was found on the site returned dates between the 1600s and the 1800s, which is seen as something that's inconsistent with the archaeology, really. And so they believe that the samples that they could have of the site could be very intrusive, and so they're more interested in preserving the site and not being so invasive for the sake of radiocarbon dating things. But when they looked at the cracked boulder, this was something that was dated between 800 and 1300 AD. So there's a fire going on here. There's going on between these 2 dates, and people are just saying that this points towards a Norse presence. But some people are saying, well, why does there have to be a Norse presence? Couldn't this just be the indigenous people and one of the things that they've done on their island, which is plausible, but it's left a lot of people in the field to really feel frustrated with each other. And you see how scholars can get frustrated in terms of that. But we get to this here, which is very new and I think very exciting. Is looking at how, the article that itself was titled American Indians Sailed to the Europe with the Vikings. And this is centuries before Columbus. This is thought that there was a Viking Indian child that could have been born in Iceland. And to me, this backs up my theory that the Vikings were happy to intermarry, mix with the community that has already been in areas that they've been looking at. And I think it just shows them to be a very accepting group of people, I think, to outsiders. And they're looking at the DNA of all of this to try and see if they can find out more theories, different interpretations. And I think it really does go down a rabbit hole and is very interesting. So this was found in 2000, quite recently, but it was they found that there had been a Native American woman that had voyaged to Europe with the Vikings, and this is because of provocative new DNA study. And this was analysing a type of DNA that was passed only from mother to child. And scientists found that more than 80 living Icelanders with genetic variations similar to the one found mostly in Native Americans. And this signature probably entered Icelandic bloodlines around about 1000 AD. When the first Viking American Indian child was born. This is what they've said. And this is something that is it's a study that has been talked about by a lot of authors. But I think one thing that I will criticise is the fact that they call them Indian. I would just say Native American is more respectable. But again, this is something that someone hasn't caught on to when they wrote this article. But a lot of historical accounts and even archaeological evidence has shown this evidence of Icelandic Vikings had reached Greenland before 1000 AD and then quickly pushed on to what is known as now Canada. Iceland has even established a new village in Newfoundland, and it lasted only a decade or so, like I've said. And it's the idea that this Native American woman sailed from North America to Iceland during the period of settlement and exploration provides the best explanation for the Icelanders' variant in the research team had suggested. So this is what they're seeing is that they're looking at the DNA differences, and they found that it was more similar to pre-Columbian contact of people in Iceland with Native Americans, which is interesting because they're now dating the DNA structure, and they found that this does coincide with evidence in terms of the period that the Vikings would have gone there. And this is something that would have carried on, and they've even traced this back to a group of women as well that was born in the early 1700s. So it seems like it's something that it stayed quite close with the Icelandic Vikings. But they're looking at genealogical records of this area of these 4 women as well, and they found that this is going on much more longer than the 1700s, and therefore to experts that is proving that the Vikings did bring a woman over and allowed that to integrate into their community, whether that was someone that they respected or even someone as a slave. But it's interesting because you see how this influence has been made through genetics and something that is stuck with them. And I think it just adds a stronger story as to what had gone on when the Vikings visited North America. So I think we're still in the early stages of this influence in North America. I think there needs to be more investigation, and I know that's something that people are still looking into. But there's a lot of documentary sources, I think, that were screaming out to people before this discovery in the 60s. And people were still trying to piece together. And it was the 60s that sort of pushed this further to show that the Vikings did have an interaction with North America and left a very strong presence in some sort of way. And I think that the archaeology is not conclusive in the second site, but when you look at the DNA evidence and looking at the settlement dwellings and the workshop and the evidence of people knitting, I think it just shows that the Vikings did try to take off in North America, but it wasn't for them, and they moved on. Like I said, there was discussion in terms of the game living there was something that the Vikings lived off, but when it got to the harsh winter months, that this was something that wasn't helpful towards them, and so they decided it wasn't an area for them and moved on. There's no evidence of conflict if they were there with the indigenous people, and I think that's just important to note, because if they were so war hungry and violent, well, surely we would have seen it through some sort of archaeology. And it does make you question what had gone on with Britain in terms of the Vikings. But I think the fact that they're so accepting to groups of people, it doesn't seem to be something where they have great raids. I know there were raids, but in Wales, there's not many raids. There's more evidence of trade. There's a lot of connection in terms of islands as well. And I think they did have connection with the indigenous Americans because it was a group of people that they were more happy to be accepting to with anyone that they've seen. And I think that came along with the fact that they were venturing further and being more curious. And so they had a different respect of different areas and maybe the way they lived life. And I think that was a threat to the Anglo-Saxons as well. But I think we're looking at evidence now that is screaming at experts and we'll only see improve, showing that Vikings made it to America before Columbus and really puts them on the map of being up there in history, I think, as well. So I'll stop screen sharing now and then I'll ask questions. So Anne, is there anything that you'd like to ask or even add?
Oh, I wish I'd read this book.
Oh,
Can you see? Oh, it's back to front. The Sagas of the Icelanders. I was supposed to read it, but look how thick it is. And it's got a map in there with Vinland on, you know.
Yeah.
You know, so it is about like it tells you how their history through myths and mythology and that. And yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I suppose I found it hard to believe that they would go on those sort of ships, you know. I think I always imagined, we thought Columbus went because he had a big, you know, fine sort of medieval ship, you know, and you think that they'd get there first, you know, but I'm sure that this is true. Yeah, this is definitely true. That they went to North America probably before Columbus.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I think it is hard to actually believe it, isn't it, really, when you think of the area and how stormy it is, but they found a way, and I think it just shows further how more attention needs to be put onto how they were able to create ships as well, to actually go over there and make an impact. But that book is really good, and to actually look at all of this. And I do like sagas because they do tell a story in a very interesting way.
It's got all the real kings, and you know, it is all about the real kings that you know, Norse kings, and you know, the ones that went to Ireland, and you know, it's really fascinating, but I just can't get through it.
It's just their way of telling their history, and I think that they didn't really write much about North America because maybe they didn't know that much because they didn't stay there long enough.
It was probably seen as something, you know, brave to do, but like you say, there wasn't any prospect there for them. I think if they went to winter, it certainly wasn't.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't something that I think they could get gripped with.
No. But that's good. Thank you.
No, thank you, Anne. Peter, anything that you'd like to ask or add?
Well, yes. The Vikings always look for safe anchorage, and that inlet that was there, that was obviously good safe anchorage for them, and they were probably overwinter there, which is why they built the buildings.
Yeah.
Now, the indigenous population of that area of America is Inuits. Now, when I was in Fort Churchill, Manitoba, in the Hudson Bay, and there, the local population of natives were Inuits. So they were more likely to be them than what we know as North American Indians.
Yeah.
I mean, Columbus called them Indians because he thought he got to India.
Yeah, and I think that's something that people need to take in account with all of that, because it can really change the perception of things as well.
Yeah.
But thank you, Peter. Always got some nice little bits of knowledge there, so thank you. Richard?
No, really interesting. You know, I believe they probably did get there. You know, there's already proof that they were trading down in the Middle East and everything. Now, virtually, if you can get a long boat through the Bay of Biscay, you should be able to get across the Atlantic.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and they were able to, you know, sort of go to Greenland, stop off in Greenland, and you know.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense.
You know, they didn't do it in one hit, so they. You know,
the trouble with the Bay of Biscay is you're side on to the waves.
Side on
I've crossed that a few times, and yes, we've had trouble crossing the Bay of Biscay in a modern ship. So yeah,
you can imagine just getting slammed sideways. But I think we definitely are getting bits and bobs that are telling us this idea. I think we just need to find the gold mine really in that area. But it's nice to see that they found little parts of, little bits of evidence to show us the social life of these individuals. So thank you, Richard. And Pat, anything you'd like to ask or add?
I was just sort of interested in the DNA Native American in Iceland.
Yeah.
You know, which seemed quite unique. I don't know whether that was something that happened, you know.
It is very unique, and I think it adds more, it just allows the argument to be more solid, I think. people are allowing this to be something to provide further evidence. We're not just having documentary and archaeological sources, we're having DNA play a part into this now. And I think this is why people are getting really excited about it, because this amazing piece of history and archaeology that we've found might not be just too good to be true. It can be the actual thing, and that's important. So thank you, Pat. Thank you. Oh, go on, Anne.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say about the Inuits. You know, the Aboriginal people of that area. I mean, you know, nobody really is that interested in them, because they didn't go and they didn't sort of develop anything, did they? They were just really, they were coastal people, I think.
Yeah,
mainly coastal people, and they just lived the same life. I was wondering whether, you know, the cross between Native American and Iceland, you know, could they be like Inuits? But no, I don't suppose. I don't know where Inuits come from.
Well, they're from that north of Canada.
Yeah,
and north of Greenland.
Yeah. So they never came from anywhere then. They just, I thought
they
maybe
were like the Laplanders.
Chinese or Lapland or something.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, it's all right, Anne. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining today. And I'll see some of you tomorrow. Okay. And if not, I'll see some of you next week. So take care and look after yourselves.
All right,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.
Carl.